Hey YouTube, what's going on? Snowflarky's Emos here today with another deck profile. This is my Counter Fairy deck profile. Counter Fairies are a deck that I have had a lot of fun with over time. I love trap cards so much, and counter traps are particularly cool given how powerful Spell Speed 3 is. And I just love these monsters that they made, that they kind of have their own unique interaction with counter trap cards and aren't just like an outright archetype of all monsters of the same name. They all got different names even though they fit this theme, and they clearly fit this deck. But anyway, it's pretty sweet. We're going to use counter trap cards, and our monsters are going to get effects off of them. That is very awesome. With that said, let's get into the cards. Starting off with our monsters, we are playing 3 copies of Bountiful Artemis. Bountiful Artemis always been the linchpin of the deck. It's a 1600 attack fairy monster, 4 stars, but as a great effect, while this card is face up on the field, you can draw 1 card from your deck each time a counter trap card is activated. So that's pretty sick. Basically playing a counter trap is going to draw us a card, immediately replacing the card spent in our hand, kind of maintaining a certain amount of cards that we have access to, which is pretty sweet. And the nice thing about Bountiful Artemis is it's not a hard once per turn, so multiple Bountiful Artemises will stack, getting you multiple draws, making this a very exciting card to have on the field. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Minerva, Scholar of the Sky. Scholar of the Sky is pretty good. It's a 4-star fairy monster with 1700 attack, and each time a counter trap is activated, immediately after it resolves, this card gains 500 attack, which is pretty sweet. We love that because the one thing this deck really misses is a large attack monster. You know, Artemis is only 16. So as soon as one counter trap card exists, resolves, and this one gets 2200 attack, that's pretty good, and it only goes up from there. So this monster can get a really big attack stat, which is important for doing a lot of damage and closing out our game before our opponents can get their outs to our setup. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Guiding Ariadne. Guiding Ariadne is a pretty sweet card. It's a pendulum fairy monster, and most importantly, when it's in the pendulum zone, it gives us the effects that you don't have to pay life points or discard a card to activate your counter trap cards. That makes cards like the Solemn cards and other counter traps that we are playing a lot more powerful, as we don't even have to worry about paying the cost. We just activate them, negate cards, and then draw with Bountiful Artemis, which is pretty sweet. But if this card's a monster on the field and it's destroyed by battle or card effect, that card effect includes if it's destroyed while being a pendulum scale, you can reveal 3 counter traps from your deck. Your opponent chooses one of them to add to your hand, and you shuffle the rest back into the deck. So pretty cool. If you have 3 copies of a specific counter trap in the deck, you can just pick 3 of those so that your opponent doesn't really get a choice. But either way, you're going to make use of most counter traps you're getting. So Guiding Ariadne is pretty sweet. Next, I'm playing 1 copy of Barrier Statue of the Heavens. This card has a great synergy with this deck as a 4-star fairy monster. It means we're going to be able to bring it out easily with Ties of the Brethren. And of course, it just makes it so that neither player can special summon monsters except light monsters. Light monsters are pretty common, so there are some matchups where this card's not going to do a lot. But there are some matchups where this card will outright win you the game, and that's worth throwing it in as one of, for sure, very powerful to have set up on a board where we have counter traps and whatnot ready to protect it. And last for the monsters, I'm playing 2 copies of Honest. Honest is pretty sweet. 4-star fairy monster, 1100 attack. That means it works with Ties of the Brethren and whatnot. But Honest is just a great card because while this card's in our hand and our light monster does battle with an opponent's monster, we can discard this card from our hand and our monster gains attack equal to the attack of the monster it's battling. So that's nice. Gives us battle protection for Bountiful Artemis or Barrier Statue of the Heavens, especially because if we summon this card off of Ties of the Brethren and it's on the field, we can bounce it back to our hand in order to, use its hand effect. And that is it for our monsters. Next up, going into our spell cards, I am playing 3 copies of Ties of the Brethren. Ties of the Brethren is a very great card in this deck. We pay 2,000 life points to target a level 4 or lower monster we control. And for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters. But if we do that, we can special summon 2 monsters from our deck with the same type, attribute, and level as the monster, but different names. That's why it's important that everything is a light 4-star fairy monster. It means we can bring out pretty much any card in our deck with this. And we can't use our battle phase the turn that we activate this card. So that's pretty cool. Having this card in any of our light fairies allows us to get 2 more light fairies that are different cards, which is very powerful. If we can use this to get the trifecta of Bountiful Artemis, Honest, and Barrier Statue of the Heavens on the field, this is very powerful. Because Honest will make them be able to beat something by battle. This stops special summoning, so we normally have to deal with only one monster. Bountiful Artemis, of course, means that our counter traps that we're going to set in our back row, we're going to be able to draw and replenish cards. So as long as we survive the next turn, we'll have cards to continue doing it, while our opponent is going to have much less. So Ties of the Brethren, just a very powerful card in this deck. Very cool to use. Next up, I'm playing 3 Pot of the Extravagance. In this build, we're not really going into the extra deck for any reason. We want our counter fairy monsters to sit on the field, and Barrier Statue of the Heavens means we can't special summon a ton of different things anyway. So Pot of the Extravagance is pretty nice. We just banish 6 extra deck cards face down, draw 2. We'll take that. Next, we are playing 3 copies of Pot of Duality. If we don't have Ties of the Brethren to pop off, Pot of Duality is a good card to have. It can search us for a specific card that we're looking for to set in our field. Maybe we want to sit on Barrier Statue of the Heavens. Maybe we want to sit on Bountiful Artemis. Whatever we can get our hands on, Pot of Duality can do that. Also good for follow-up turns after Ties of the Brethren to get a key card. Just, you know, a pretty good card to look at the top 3 cards of our deck, add 1 to our hand. Next, some equipped spells that are pretty useful. 1 copy of Moon Mirror Shield. Moon Mirror Shield we just equip to a monster, and then whenever it battles an opponent's monster, it will always gain attack equal to either the attack or defense of the opposing monster, whichever is higher, plus 100. Basically means it will always win by battle by at least 100. In addition to Moon Mirror Shield, I am playing 1 copy of Mage Power. Mage Power is a pretty cool equipped spell that just gives us the monster we equip 500 attack and defense for each spell and trap card on the field. We're going to have lots of spell and trap cards in the back row, so this card gets pretty big, and I just like this card because it gives a lot of damage to attack directly with, which can close out a game. So 1 of each, I kind of like it as such, so that I can have each for the different occasions. And that is it for the spell cards. Next up, we're getting into our trap cards. I am playing 2 copies of Drastic Drop-Off. Drastic Drop-Off is a pretty sweet counter trap that we can flip at the after on our opponent's draw phase after they draw their card to make them immediately discard their card and send it to the graveyard. That gives them 1 less tool to deal with on our turn, and of course Bountiful Artemis, if it's on the field, it will then draw us a card, which is pretty nice. We certainly like gaining that card advantage, so Drastic Drop-Off is a pretty good card to have 2 of. Next up, 3 copies of Ultimate Providence. Ultimate Providence is a pretty sweet counter trap card. When a spell, a trap card, or monster effect is activated, we discard the same type of card, a monster, spell, or trap, and if we do, negate the activation of that card and destroy it. What that makes this card awesome is if we have that Bountiful Artemis in the Pendulum Zone, then suddenly Ultimate Providence doesn't require a cost, so this is just a free Omni Negate that'll draw us a card. If we have Bountiful Artemis on the field, definitely like that. Continuing with Omni Negates, we are playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. This is the counter trap card that we pay half our life points to negate a summon or a spell or trap card activation. Of course, that cost becomes free if we have Guiding Ariadne on the field, and of course another counter trap to get us to draw cards with Bountiful Artemis. Next, we're playing 3 copies of Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is pretty nice because when a monster effect is activated or a monster is special summoned, we pay 1500 life points to negate and destroy it. Once again, free with Guiding Ariadne, and Bountiful Artemis will draw us a card when we resolve it. And of course, we are playing 3 copies of Solemn Warning. Solemn Warning, of course, we pay 2000 life points to negate a summon and destroy that, which is pretty sick. What's nice about this card is this card synergizes really well with having the Barrier Statue of the Heavens on board, because if they're limited to only 1 normal summon because of Barrier Statue, you know, they're not special summoning light monsters, having Solemn Warning to answer that right out the gate pretty much ends their turn right there, and of course will draw us a card if we also have Bountiful Artemis. So definitely a good card to have in the deck. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of Broken Line. Broken Line is a counter trap that's pretty interesting, and I kind of like it. It's a little situational, but when a spell trap or a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated in this card's column, while this card is set, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy this card. So it's pretty easy to just put this in any column, you know, especially like the middle column or one of the Link Monster Zone columns. and get an activation off this. Basically, just rip it as soon as you can. Once your opponent sees it, they might try playing around it, which will be kind of funny, but that's why we play only one. And I just like this because this card doesn't really have a cost, so it's still good to activate even if we haven't got Guiding Ariadne yet. And we'll certainly make use of that. Broken Line, pretty fun one of. And last for our trap cards, I am playing 3 copies of Storming Mirror Force. Not a counter trap, but a pretty useful card. Storming Mirror Force just says when an opponent's monster declares an attack, return all their attack position monsters to the hand. So this is just a nice tool to have to protect our barrier statue or our guiding Ariadne if we don't have our equip cards yet. And, you know, don't have the ability to protect them with Honest. Just gives us a sort of defense against attack position monsters, bounces them off the field, clearing the field. They'll have to commit to their summon next turn, and of course just removing them from the field means that we can attack directly, which is pretty sick, pretty cool card. And that is it for the main deck. So that is it for my Counter Fairy deck profile. Pretty cool deck. You know, just very fun to pick up and play. Use some cool counter traps in a cool strategy where you draw cards. Use these cool fairy monsters. You know, really, you know, have an answer to everything your opponent has. I quite dig it. Let me know what you think. Love to know what you're doing with Counter Fairies if you're playing them anywhere. We can talk about it in the comments below. Thanks for checking out the deck profile, and I'll catch you in the next one.